Someone had posted this question in one of the Facebook groups recently. They asked the question, how much money can they expect to make in their music teaching business? This person was just getting started out and they wanted to know how much money, if successful, could they possibly make? And I think a better way to approach that topic would be to ask yourself, how much money do you want to make? What type of salary would you like to pay yourself? And put your music teaching business to the side and just focus on what your needs are. Let's say you're 30 years old and you're recently married. And maybe over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to want to move into a bigger house, have some kids, move into a nice school district. Your expenses are going to obviously increase. Perhaps you talk to someone who's a little further down the road than you, who has kids, who lives in that school district that you want to move into, to get a sense of what kind of money you need to make. Let's say at this point you're making $40,000 a year, but really let's say you need to be making $100,000 a year, just to kind of have a nice firm number to work with. And I would start with that. Okay, I want to start a teaching business. I need to make $100,000 a year, and I need to get there in, say, 5 years. I mean, that's really how I wish I had started my business, is identifying that. And really what I want to talk about is, these three different levels of a mindset, these three different mindset levels for a music studio owner. But you got to start with that number. So let's say the number is $100,000. I'm just going to set that to the side as I explore these three different levels of music studio ownership. And it's really, like I said, about mindset. And I went through all three levels. And I think we all, start out with level one. Level one being you're a solo teacher and it's just you. Level two is where you now are teaching, but you're still teaching, but you've brought on an additional one or two teachers. So your business is starting to expand a little bit. Level three is where you're no longer teaching, or you're teaching only because you really enjoy it, or that you feel that teaching is going to allow you to somehow grow your business. And I'm going to name these levels. I'm going to call level one is the solopreneur, the solo music teacher. Level two, I'm going to refer to that level as the reluctant entrepreneur. And level three is the entrepreneur. And you can be a level one music studio where it's just you, but you can still have the mindset of an entrepreneur. And I'm going to keep going back to that point of mindset and how important it is. Okay, so let's talk about level one. That's where most of us start. It's just you, and you're teaching students. And let's just say you're running it out of your house. And like I said, that's how I started. That type of business, it all centers around you, the instructor. You're the star of the show. People are there taking lessons because they're there to be with you. And you really have the freedom to make your teaching business really about whatever you want it to be about, as long as there are enough people to fill your schedule. Let's say you're very passionate about teaching Celtic hip hop, specifically that. As long as there are enough people in your market that want to learn how to play Celtic hip hop, I don't even know if that's such a thing, but as long as there are enough people that want to do it, you got yourself a successful business. It makes me think of my bass teacher when I was in high school and college. I was playing double bass, and there was a guy, his name Henry Lowe. He played for the St. Louis Symphony. He was the principal bassist, and he only taught serious students. They're mostly adults or college age kids. And by the end of my high school career, I was getting pretty serious about the double bass and was considering pursuing a career in a symphonic orchestra. So it was a really big deal that I got to take lessons with him. And I have to assume he charged top dollar, and it gave me nice bragging rights. I got to tell people, hey, I study bass with Henry Lowe. People would say, who's Henry Lowe? Well, he's the principal bassist of the St. Louis Symphony. Oh, wow. So I got status from that. People really, it was my way of being able to tell people that I was really serious about the double bass. And he taught me whatever he thought was important. The lessons, the whole experience was all about music. It was all about grooming me to be a top-notch bassist. Had I gone in there and said, hey, Henry, can you teach me how to play some Charles Mingus jazz bass lines? He would have rolled his eyes and said, no, this is not what it's about here. This is all about me and my vision for my students. And he was the star of the show. And that's exactly how it was for me when I started my teaching business. My teaching business was just bass guitar, electric bass. And I taught kids the way I wanted them to be taught. It was focused on what I thought was valuable, what lessons they needed to learn. And I was open to them, presenting to me certain ideas about what they wanted to learn. But at the end of the day, I had a very specific course for my students. They either bought into it or they went elsewhere. Fortunately for me, I had enough students that allowed me, at say the age of 25, to make the kind of money that I wanted to make at that point in my life. And look, there aren't a ton of bass students out there. And I was living in Manhattan at the time. Fortunately enough, there were enough bass students in Manhattan that allowed me to run what I defined as a successful teaching business. So let's look at the pros and cons of that model. The pros are, for one, control. You're in complete control of the business. The music studio owner that has a staff of, let's say, 8 different instructors doesn't have as much control of the delivery of the product. The teaching staff is delivering the product. Another benefit of the solopreneur, the solo music teacher, is that it's really all about music. It's really all about you and your approach to music. Sure, you're, maybe considering what the child wants as well, but your energy or your focus is on lesson plans and creating a better music lesson experience. Once your schedule is full, there's not much effort that's needed in marketing. You only got 30 or 40 hours available a week to teach. Once those hours are full, that's it. Now let's look at the downside of that business model. Well, for one is, once your schedule's full, now how do you make more money? Well, you can raise your rates, and maybe that's going to give you a few $100 extra a month. And if that's enough, great. But if you're trying to hit that goal of $100,000 a year for your salary, and that price increase of $10, maybe even $20 per student isn't going to get you there, you got a problem. That model's not working for you. Perhaps you then decide, no, I'm going to switch to a group class model. And as long as you can persuade yourself and genuinely believe that that model is beneficial for the student, then great. Now you can certainly increase your profit margins and your earnings a lot more. And if you can get to that $100,000, that goal that you're working towards, great. Another downside to the solopreneur is if you get sick, if you can't show up, no revenue comes in. You're sick for 3 days and you don't get paid. So the solopreneur has to show up in order to get paid. What I like about the solopreneur is that things are very clear while you're in that state. It's very clear to you as to what you need to do to be successful. You're not consumed with thoughts of marketing and systems. All the systems are in your head. You're not burdened with rent, with payroll, with insurance, with managing employees not showing up, employees getting sick, employees not falling in line and buying into your vision. Kind of like a therapist. People pay money to spend time with you so you can help them and teach them how to play music. Now let's look at the next level, the reluctant entrepreneur. Level 2. The level 2 business is the music studio where the solopreneur says, hey, I kind of like this music teaching thing. I can make more money if I hire additional teachers. So they go and they rent out a space, they hire a couple teachers, they're still teaching. They have these new expenses now with rent and insurance and utilities and payroll. This is where a lot of studio owners go wrong, is they conduct their level 2 business just like they did when they were a level 1 business. What it takes to be successful at a level 1 business does not apply to a level 2 music studio. A whole new mindset needs to come into play. If you continue to run your studio with the same mindset and the same approach as to when it was just you, you're going to have a lot of tension in your life, a lot of tension in your business, and growth might occur, but most likely not at the pace that you would like. Once you hire one instructor, you are an organization. An organization requires vision, requires leadership, requires goals, requires a mission. What's the purpose of this organization? Most people, myself included, they hire that first teacher, that second teacher, and they just say, hey, now you're a part of this teaching studio. Do your thing. I'm going to do my thing. Here's what you're going to get paid. And they're left on their own. And what happens? Your schedule fills up. So new students start calling and you start funneling students over to them. But there's no consistent brand promise. There's no consistent experience from teacher to teacher. Everyone's just doing their own thing. They're not operating as an organization. If you continue to run your level 2 business the same way you ran your level 1 business, if you use the same strategies and tactics to grow your level 1 business, if you apply those to your level 2 business, you're not going to experience the type of growth that you'd hope for. Quite often, what happens to people in that level 2 phase is they look up one day and they realize they're actually making less money than they were when they were just on their own. And that defeats the whole purpose of hiring other teachers. And I call this level 2 stage the stage of the reluctant entrepreneur. Because quite often the studio owner is thinking to themselves, I love teaching music. I just got into this because I love teaching music. I wanted to make some more money, but all this business stuff I'm overwhelmed with. I don't love it. In this marketing stuff, I don't really understand. I don't know where to begin. I know I need to do it. And I'm not making as much money as I was before. I have all these expenses now, and I've got to teach more to keep my expenses down or to offset my expenses. And it's easy for music studios to exist in this level 2 phase for years. I probably existed in that level 2 stage for probably 8 to 10 years. My music studio, I owned it for 17 years. I'd say for a good 8 to 10 years, I was a solid level 2 music studio. I was a reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't understand what entrepreneurship really was. I didn't understand that my business had certain needs that weren't being met. It's important that you look at your music studio as a living and breathing entity that has its own needs. And what your music studio needs, once it becomes an organization, once you have 1 or 2 employees, is it needs leadership. We'll talk a little bit about what that means. So the pros of the level 2 music studio that's being run by the reluctant entrepreneur is that the level 2 music studio is now in position for some substantial growth. The groundwork's in place. Downside to the level 2 music studio is the threat of burnout. This is where burnout occurs. When music studio owners are telling me that they feel like they're burning out, it's probably because they're at the level 2 stage. They do everything in their business. They're teaching, they're cleaning the bathroom, they're doing the billing, scheduling makeups. The list goes on and on and on. One of the other big downsides is that you, the owner, is making less money than before. So let's talk about the level 3 music studio. This is a music studio whose owner has fully embraced what it means to be an entrepreneur. This is when you, as the studio owner, can step back and step away from the music studio and get a bird's eye perspective of the music studio. And you only acquire that bird's eye perspective by making real changes in your business, real changes in how you manage your time and how you position yourself in the studio to allow you to gain that perspective. Have you ever gone to your music studio, maybe to pick something up on a Sunday when you're closed, and you walk in there, there's no students, no staff, and you feel a little sense of relief? Maybe you're able to appreciate a little bit more what you've accomplished because you're standing back. You're looking at your business from the outside. Even though you're inside the building, the business isn't operating, and you have some perspective in that moment. The entrepreneur is always working towards that perspective and existing in that space all the time. There are certain things that only you, the entrepreneur, can do. Only you, as the studio owner, can establish a vision for your business. Only you can establish the systems and the strategies for growth. Everything else can be delegated. And yes, even the teaching. Most importantly, the teaching. If you're teaching in your music studio, you are limiting your music studio's ability to growth. You're not meeting the needs of your music studio. Your music studio needs a leader. When you're teaching, you're in a room with one student, thinking about that one student. Meanwhile, outside the room is your music studio happening. It's your business happening. And you're nowhere present. You're not physically present, nor are you mentally present. So let's say you teach 2 or 3 hours a day. Let's say you've got, 10 to 20 students on your roster. Well, you're thinking about those students as well during the week. You're investing mental and emotional energy into those students outside the lesson. You're thinking about them and their lessons. What if you took those 15 hours, let's make it 10 hours a week that you're teaching, and then take all the time that you spend on investing mental energy into thinking about the students outside of the lesson? And what if you converted those all into hours dedicated to improving and growing your business? What if the mental energy that you spend on your students outside the lesson is mental energy and thought devoted to improving and growing your music studio? You'd probably have more students. You'd probably have a more efficient music studio. So I think the pros and the cons of the level 3 music studio, pretty obvious, are pretty self-evident. A music studio that's led by an entrepreneur is a music studio that is getting its needs met. You'll never get to that level 3 stage if you're a reluctant entrepreneur. If you don't like business, if you don't like marketing, it's probably because you haven't ever had the peace in your life to focus on those things. If you find yourself saying, I know that marketing is important. I know that having tighter and well-defined systems in my studio is important, but I just don't have the time to get around to those things. You're running an upside down business. What are you spending all your time doing then? Well, I'm spending my time on billing and scheduling makeups, emails, sales calls, upset parents. All that stuff can be delegated. It's a whole nother conversation as to how you do that. But I just want to keep driving home this point that only you can define a vision for your music studio. Only you can define a purpose statement. Why does your music studio exist? How are you making the world a better place? Only you can define that. Only you can establish a framework for a culture and a community within your music studio. Only you can develop the systems for your music studio to operate. Only you can develop marketing strategies that will help fuel your music studio's growth. Everything else can be delegated. True music studio success is ultimately found by the solopreneur, the level 1 music studio owner, because it's very clear to the solopreneur what the objective is. It's very clear what they need to do to be successful. And real success could be found by the level 3 music studio, the music studio that's led by an entrepreneur, a visionary, a person with a plan, a person who's not so emotionally invested in the day-to-day, person who has an assistant, maybe 2 assistants that are running the ship, that are making it go, but is standing on the bow of the ship. I think the bow is the front, right? Standing on the bow, looking at the pathway ahead, planning for the future, trying to identify how to get to the destination. The level 2 music studio owner exists in a world of stress, of tension, of chaos, of burnout, and it all begins with mindset. If your objective is to be a level 3 music studio one day, you're going to go through the level 2 stage. You're going to go through a stage where you're still teaching full time. But if you've got a plan in place to get out of that stage to a level 3, if you can say to yourself, I know for now I need to teach and teach a lot, can't afford not to teach. But here are the specific things that have to happen in my studio in order for me to get out of teaching. And here's my plan to allow me to be the entrepreneur that I need to be, to allow me to be the leader that I need to be, and to allow me to serve my business, to meet my business's needs, which will allow me to better serve my customers. If you truly are a customer-centric music studio, if you truly place the customer first, you can do that as a level 1 or a level 3 music studio. You can't do that as a level 2 music studio, especially if you're a reluctant entrepreneur. If all you want to do is teach music, if teaching music is your passion, then don't hire a second music teacher, or don't hire another music teacher. Don't hire more music teachers. Make it all about you. Be like my music teacher was when I was a kid, Henry Lowe, the principal bassist of the St. Louis Symphony. It was all about him. He was the star, and he was a great teacher, and all he focused on was music. He didn't care about marketing or entrepreneurship or leadership. He didn't have to. He was the business. The minute you hire that first employee, implications are significant. Most of us don't realize what those implications are. We continue to run our business the way we always have. So to go back to my opening comment, identify for yourself how much money you want to make in your business, and then identify which business model can get you there. And once you identify that, embrace that business model so you can better serve your business and better serve your customers.